It started with a man in pajamas holding a fishing rod and smiling at the night sky, 5 seconds before an alien hunter's skull split open like a cracked melon. The others didn't even have time to react. One blinked. The next helmet turned red from the inside. And the third? He managed to shout a warning before his translator gurgled and static drowned his screams. They came here thinking we were prey. Turns out, they were walking into the trap we baited 3 years ago. The air above the northern ridge was sharp and clean, the kind of cold that bit through boots and whispered in pine branches. Cloaked ships cut across the cloud cover like shadows slicing silk, invisible to most human technology. But Earth had been learning. The moment the last of the hunter's ships slid beneath the clouds, buried seismic threads in the soil picked them up. Deep beneath an abandoned sawmill, a system that technically didn't exist began to hum. 3 miles from that mill, a girl named Hannah lay in bed pretending to be asleep. She was 15. She'd also spent the last 2 years trained in psychological conditioning, stealth survival, and silent comms protocol. She was one of the few civilians included in Earth's counter-invasion program, chosen not for her combat skills, but for how convincingly terrified she could act on camera. The moment her tablet screen flickered, she gave the performance of her life, bolting from bed, fake crying, trembling like a leaf. 2 cameras hidden in picture frames caught every moment. From above, the predators watched with delight. They always took the loud ones first. Within an hour, 43 humans were tagged and taken. From the hunter's point of view, it was efficient. Clean. A net well cast. They moved like apex ghosts, black armor, bone blades strapped to their backs, and 0 detectable footprints. They didn't speak unless necessary. Most didn't even look at each other. It wasn't arrogance. It was routine. Earth, to them, was a low-tier harvest world, no different than the marsh dwellers of Corlix 9 or the songfish people of Theta Draconis. The galactic predators weren't invaders. They were sportsmen. Earth was just a backwater forest full of tall meat. Except Earth wasn't playing that game anymore. Outside Moose Jaw, Canada, a trio of hunters dropped near a frozen creek. Their objective: secure an outpost where more captives had been tagged. The structure looked like a derelict ranger cabin, half collapsed, with mold creeping over the siding. They scanned for life signs and picked up 3. 2 heat signatures inside. 1 just beyond the treeline. The team split with perfect precision. The youngest of them, still earning his 6th fong, crept toward the tree line, confident in his stealth. That was his mistake. The snow looked untouched. That was the point. The mine under it wasn't a military explosive. It was handmade, old tech, repurposed, built from things no alien would scan for. The moment his boot triggered the trip sensor, it didn't detonate immediately. That would have been kind. Instead, it waited. He took 2 steps more. And then a spike of compressed carbon steel punched through his shin, impaling him to the dirt. His scream never left his throat. A second trap, a high-frequency field disruptor, scrambled his internal comms, frying his voice box implant. He thrashed in silence. Bleeding. Alone. But he wasn't. A man stood nearby in a snow parka. Human. Holding a crowbar. No armor. No mask. Just a bored expression and a half-chewed toothpick. The hunter tried to raise his arm blaster. The man shook his head slowly, stepped forward, and whispered, "You picked the wrong planet." Then he swung. At base camp, the hunters waiting for the young one's return began reviewing his helmet feed. It was nothing but static. Then 2 frames of motion. A flash of red. And black. Their commander growled something in his native tongue, then switched to the galactic trade language. Faulty equipment. Proceed as planned. Earth remains unresponsive. He was wrong on both counts. 15 miles south, inside what looked like a rusting grain silo, 2 men and a woman sat in front of a bank of screens. Each monitor displayed a feed: thermal, satellite, ground signal, acoustic. The woman sipped coffee from a dented mug that read Canada Moose Tour 92. She didn't smile when she saw the first alien casualty. Just muttered, Took them long enough. The man beside her zoomed in on one feed. Unit Wraith 1 is 2 minutes from contact with Squad Delta. Activating drone decoys. Outside, a hawk lifted into the air. Only it wasn't a hawk. Its wings shimmered faintly with cloaking mesh. It let out a cry, then split into 3. To the predator's tracking movement from above, it looked like a scatter pattern of fleeing wildlife. They moved toward it. They never saw the real threat coming up behind them. Meanwhile, back in the cabin, the 2 heat signatures the hunters detected turned out to be mannequins rigged with hand warmers and pig hearts. One of the predators slashed through a wall and found nothing but insulation. The second turned to regroup, only to be hit by a steel dart to the throat. Not from a gun. From a slingshot. The last predator spun and raged. He saw a human child, maybe 12, holding the slingshot. A flash of panic passed through him. Not because of the child. Because of the absence of fear. Then the floor beneath him collapsed. Pitfall. Ice. Steel spikes. The child didn't speak. Just walked away. By dawn, 3 alien bodies had been recovered by their ship. None showed signs of advanced weapons. No plasma wounds. No evidence of human tech. Just old-school brutality. Crushed windpipes. Pierced lungs. One was even strangled with a rope. Their commander stared at the reports, then at the Earth map now glowing red in 5 sectors. One of his lieutenants asked, "Orders?" The commander hesitated for the first time. Then he snarled, "Send in the full force. They want a war? Give them one." From the shadows of a tall pine overlooking their position, a man in a ghillie suit smiled and clicked a button on his belt. "Got it," he whispered. "They just activated Phase 2. Years before the first trap snapped shut, before the first hunter bled into Earth's snow, the world had already declared war, quietly. It didn't look like war, though. There were no press conferences, no sirens, no grand announcements. Just a string of missing persons, a classified memo labeled Dagger Echo, and one retired intelligence officer staring at a satellite map while chewing the same stick of gum for 6 hours. That man, Director Alan Reese, had been laughed out of his own agency years ago for suggesting that the disappearances in the Yukon, Alaska, and Siberia weren't local crimes or wild animal attacks. He claimed it was something worse. Something external. They called him paranoid. Said he watched too much science fiction. But when he presented his evidence, thermal images of craft too cold to be detected, synchronized civilian vanishings, pulse patterns in the upper ionosphere, they quietly brought him back in. No apology. Just funding. Dagger Echo was born from the ashes of disbelief. The core principle was simple. Earth could not outgun a galactic predator race. It couldn't build ships fast enough, couldn't match plasma weaponry, couldn't hope to match tech that had evolved for millennia beyond humanity. So instead of fighting them head-on, Dagger Echo trained humans to be the one thing galactic predators had never faced before: prey that bites back. Not armies. Ghosts. Operatives taught to vanish into terrain, mimic fear, feign ignorance, and lead hunters into handcrafted kill boxes. Not soldiers. Trappers. Every operative went through simulations modeled after alien behavior, hunt protocols, communication patterns, scanning habits, and most importantly, arrogance. The predators saw Earth as weak. That was their flaw. Dagger Echo didn't need to change their minds. It needed to use that flaw as a weapon. Wraith 1, the man in the snow, was among the first graduates. No name. No record. Just a file that said, "Survivability rating, exceptional." He could gut a deer with broken glass, vanish into tundra, and build a working EMP charge out of scrap metal and battery acid. He was deployed 2 years before the current harvest began. His objective was not to defend. It was to observe, map predator patrols, and plant the bait. And the bait was everywhere. Abandoned churches. Campsites. Isolated towns. Each one rigged with old-school traps, sensor feeds, and decoy signals. They even used real people, volunteers, trained from childhood to act like average civilians but equipped with neuroblockers to fool scans. Hannah was one of them. So was the boy with the slingshot. Their terror wasn't real. It was rehearsed. On the alien side, however, the illusion was flawless. The galactic predators categorized Earth as a primitive hunting zone. Their archives showed no previous resistance. No official war record. No sign of orbital defense. To them, humans were clever animals at best. Their only concern was not alerting the wider galactic community to their recreational hunts. That meant speed and silence. Land, harvest, extract, erase. And Earth had played along perfectly, until now. The body count in their own ranks was rising. 3 patrols had gone dark. Their ship's navigation logs had been corrupted from within. Even more unnerving, one of their captured humans had somehow slipped free from cryohold and left a symbol carved into the wall of the ship's hull. It was a jagged shape, rough and meaningless to them. But to Earth, it was the old sigil of Dagger Echo, scratched by a girl who was never meant to be caught, only to be sent inside. Her name was Lex. She had volunteered for internal infiltration. Her nanite-laced blood had allowed command to monitor her vitals and surroundings without transmitting a single signal. Every breath she took near a control panel, every hallway she was dragged through, every restraint they used on her, her body recorded and relayed silently. From Earth's perspective, the inside of the hunter's ship had already been mapped. What the predators thought was their stronghold was now a blueprint being used to plan a surgical strike. But the signal wasn't just information. It was a countdown. Meanwhile, in a different region, a second Dagger Echo unit, call sign Hollow Team, moved into position near a downed predator drone. They didn't touch it. That would trigger alerts. Instead, they placed it on a sled, rigged it with a false heat core, and dragged it into an area laced with copper wire snares and motion-triggered knives. The drone emitted a standard distress call. Within 20 minutes, another hunter group landed to retrieve it. What they didn't know was that the call also triggered a human network of silent drones hidden in the canopy. As the hunters dragged the wreckage aboard their skiff, the foliage above them rustled. One of them glanced up just in time to see a shaped charge detach from a tree and ignite midair. The blast wasn't big, but it was surgical. Their skiff lost its anti-grav balance and slammed into the trees, flipping once and snapping in half. 3 of the 4 were killed on impact. The last tried to flee. He made it 15 feet before he tripped a deadfall, 10-foot steel spears, rigged from a fallen radio tower. The command center under the sawmill logged the event without celebration. The older woman with the moose mug watched the data stream in. 6 down. 2 captured, said the technician next to her. 0 alerts sent off-world. She nodded. Keep it that way. We're not ready for the real war yet. He glanced at her. Ma'am, if this works, do we go public? She didn't answer right away. Just stared at the screen showing the Predator's ship's interior, grainy and flickering. You don't poke a sleeping empire. You put a blade to its throat and don't make a sound. High above Earth's atmosphere, in a zone considered inaccessible to current human technology, a small orbital platform, black as space itself, drifted silently. It didn't appear on any telescopes, not because of invisibility tech, but because it was built from scavenged alien materials. It was Earth's first real step into the void. It had no name. Just a single inscription etched on the inside hatch. For those who vanish without a sound. Inside sat a man watching all Earthside activity through a single retinal feed. He didn't move much. Just observed. His hand rested on a panel with one button, shielded behind reinforced glass. That button wouldn't launch a nuke. It wouldn't trigger a public warning. It would broadcast Earth's Counterstrike signal to every known predator species across the galaxy. But not yet. Not until they sent more. Not until they were all inside the trap. Night fell hard and fast over the northern quadrant. Snow rolled in sideways, thick and wind-whipped, blanketing the alien landing zones until even their heat signatures began to blur. To the galactic predators, it was a minor nuisance. They adapted to climates far worse. Their armor adjusted its temperature balance and visibility range. Their vision modes switched effortlessly from thermal to sonar to echo map topography. But no setting could account for the feeling of being watched. Not from a distance. From everywhere. They couldn't name it. Couldn't detect it. But the pack leaders began to notice the younger hunters checking their corners more than usual, shifting their weight with unease. This world felt wrong now. It wasn't just terrain or resistance. It was the sense that they were no longer chasing anything. They were being led. Miles underground, Director Reese leaned over a map filled with glowing red pulses. Each pulse represented a zone where bait units had been deployed. Some zones were cold, dormant. But more and more were flaring active. Reese tapped a corner of the map where 5 dots blinked rapidly. He zoomed in. A small hunting party had entered a timber region filled with false terrain, foam snow layers, artificial trees, even fake wildlife. In the center of the zone stood an old shack with a rusted pickup truck in front. The aliens scanned the building and confirmed life inside. 1 human, maybe 2. The readings matched a common domestic energy signature. Predictable. Unalarming. They approached cautiously, scanning for traps. There were none. Or rather, they found none. Inside, a middle-aged man sat at a table eating soup from a metal bowl. He looked up, startled, as the door cracked open. The first hunter entered. Then the second. They were in. The human dropped his spoon, stumbled backward, and made a run for the far room. The aliens followed, boots crunching ice on wooden floorboards. Then they heard it. Laughter. Not from the man. From somewhere else in the house. Laughter that didn't belong. The wall to their right exploded inward. Not with fire. With steel. A weighted counterweight tied to an industrial pulley system swung in from behind a disguised cabinet, slamming into the second hunter's chest with the force of a truck. The first turned to shoot and slipped, because the floor wasn't real. It was waxed, glass-laced wood treated with cryogel. His boots lost all traction. He fell hard and stayed down long enough for the man in the next room to emerge holding a device that looked like a leaf blower but wasn't. By the time the alien tried to aim, the man had already triggered the coil inside the device, launching a net of synthetic wire laced with current that scrambled his armor interface. He convulsed, twitched, and blacked out. The man calmly walked over, leaned down, and said, "That soup was cold, by the way." Elsewhere, in the mountains, Hollow Team watched through scoped lenses as another hunting group moved across a frozen lake. Beneath the surface, charges waited. But they wouldn't trigger until the center of the lake, where weight calculations confirmed a full squad would be within blast radius. The trick wasn't in killing them. It was in timing the kill to match the pattern of prior strikes. Earth's goal wasn't just to eliminate the enemy. It was to confuse their command, make them doubt every move, break their trust in their tech and instincts. The blast came when the 7th footstep hit the ice. A controlled detonation ruptured the lakebed. 2 hunters were gone instantly. The third tried to leap back but was shot midair with a tranquilizer that froze his joints instead of sedating him. His fall cracked the ice further. Another disappeared under. The last one didn't run. He stood still, weapon raised, scanning, breathing fast. He looked around and screamed into his comms. "They know us!" But the signal didn't send. The comms had been jammed since the first step onto the lake. They just hadn't realized it. Back on the alien command ship hovering above the Arctic rim, the senior hunt leader paced in silence. He'd stopped trying to explain the situation to the crew. Every new report was worse. Every retrieval mission ended in silence. He'd reviewed helmet footage, analyzed troop patterns, rerun strategy simulations. Nothing made sense. How had prey evolved this fast? How had a primitive species learned to neutralize their tracking? He called up a live feed from one of the drones still active in the southern forests. It showed something strange. A child walking barefoot in the snow, smiling. Singing. The hunter watching through the drone lens issued a warning to intercept. But the moment they stepped into the area, the child vanished. Then static. And one word: bait. Inside the Predator's ship, Panic simmered beneath the surface. Several lower-ranked hunters requested recall. Some even whispered of a human counterforce. The idea was absurd. The Empire had classified Earth as unfit for conquest centuries ago. Unarmed. Isolated. Valuable only for sport. But now the ship's systems were acting strange. Lights flickered. Internal doors opened and closed on their own. Navigation logs were overwritten. And someone had gained access to their archive footage and edited it. In the viewing hall, a looped video played. Their own kill footage. But this time, each image of a slain human was followed by an overlay, a name, an age, a location, and then, last seen alive, returned in body bag, declared suicide, declared accident. It was mockery. It was war. Elsewhere inside the ship, Lex, still playing the part of a terrified captive, smiled as she felt the shift in energy. Guards were no longer relaxed. They flinched. They triple-checked cell locks. She didn't need to escape. She only needed to wait. And when the cell door finally opened and a soldier stepped inside wearing a snow camo exosuit, she simply said, "You're 2 hours late." He nodded once and handed her a device no bigger than a coin. She pressed it to her neck. Instantly, her vitals returned to normal and the nanites inside her blood began uploading everything she'd seen. The soldier motioned for her to follow. She did, but not before carving one last symbol into the wall with a shard of alien bone she'd hidden under her heel. The Dagger Echo sigil. A silent reminder. A calling card. Back on Earth, in the control center, the older woman looked up from the incoming data stream. "Lex is out. Phase 3 green." The tech beside her looked anxious. "That means they'll know we've been inside. What if they send more?" The woman turned slowly. "Let them. The more they send, the fewer make it back. That's how a counterstrike works. One body at a time. One fear at a time." And far above, in the darkness of space, the orbital platform received the new stream. The man watching it didn't blink. He reached for the shielded switch. But he didn't press it. Not yet. They weren't finished hunting the hunters. Not yet. The snowstorm had settled into a slow, whispering silence across the valley, blanketing wreckage and footprints alike. From above, it looked like peace. But under the cover of that stillness, Earth's sharpest teeth were already in motion. Deep in Sector 9, just off the edge of a frozen quarry, 3 Reaper squads dropped from low orbit. Their suits weren't flashy. They didn't glow or shimmer. They were old exosuits, blackened with time and scarred from prior missions. But every creak of metal had purpose, every attachment hand-forged to deliver pain or precision, depending on what the mission called for. These weren't standard military. They weren't even technically military at all. They were what Earth had left when diplomacy failed and bureaucracy hesitated. They were the last answer to a question no one had dared ask. Their boots barely crunched on the snow. They fanned out wordlessly. Communications remained off. There were no call signs, no shouting, no dramatics. These were the ghosts that made Dagger Echo possible, the enforcement end. They moved like shadows, guided by the quiet hum of bioscience scanners and Lex's freshly uploaded blueprints of the alien vessel. The mission was not to destroy it. That would be too obvious. Too satisfying. No, the mission was to dismantle it from the inside and make sure every survivor aboard knew exactly what it felt like to be prey on a world that didn't forgive. As the Reapers infiltrated from the west, Hollow Team reemerged from the forested basin. They had been waiting for this moment for 2 years, rotating in and out of cryosleep between traps and training. The moment the Galactic Predators walked into Earth's terrain, Hollow Team became the knife waiting in the dirt. Now they rose from that same dirt, cloaked in synthetic moss and frost armor, moving toward the command ship's surface landing pad. Their task was brutal but essential: cut off the exits. Kill anything that ran. Inside the Predator vessel, confusion had turned to desperation. Communications were reduced to hand signals and panic screeches in native tongues. One of the lieutenants tried to initiate a full lockdown sequence but was met with an error message in crude Galactic script. Too late. Try hiding. Another attempted to override the navigation protocols and trigger escape vectors. But the controls were unresponsive, rerouted to a secondary node that shouldn't exist. They traced it. Found the room. It was the cryo chamber where Lex had been stored. And now it was empty. As the alien crews scrambled to react, the lights throughout the ship went dark. Not a blackout. Worse. A controlled power cut, timed with surgical precision. In the pitch-black silence, the audio feed came alive. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a message. It was the sound of footsteps. Human ones. Echoing through their ventilation systems, recorded from the corridors of their own ship hours before. They listened, frozen. The sound turned into 2 sets of footsteps. Then 3. Then more. And laughter. Human laughter. Not cruel. Not mocking. Just knowing. Confident. One of the Predator's soldiers broke rank and ran. He bolted through a side corridor, past the escape bay, through an engineering hold, and toward the exterior hatch. It opened. He gasped cold air. And saw them. A full circle of Earth operatives. Standing still. Some with bows. Some with repurposed rifles. Others with only knives and face paint. One of them stepped forward, a tall man, unarmed, face covered by a faded balaclava. He pointed one hand toward the Predator. Then slowly lowered it. The meaning was clear. Run. The alien hesitated, then turned and bolted into the tree line. He didn't make it 20 steps. A wire snapped around his throat, dragging him backward into the snow. His scream was short. His body hit the ground with a thud. The Reapers didn't move. They simply waited for the next one. Back inside, the hunters began to fracture. Squads turned on each other, blaming sabotage, cursing whoever had brought humans aboard. One slammed a clawed fist into a wall, only to trigger a hidden spiked trap loaded into the ventilation duct beside it. He collapsed, shrieking. His squad mates pulled him back, and discovered a note taped to the shaft in primitive Earth script. It's not the weapons. It's the hands that use them. Elsewhere, Lex and her extraction escort moved through the lower decks, disabling systems one by one. She didn't smile. She didn't say much. But the look in her eyes told the soldier beside her that she wasn't afraid anymore. She was calculating. Focused. This was the mission she'd been raised for. She planted a small device into the central power core, a nano loop that would slowly corrupt the mainframe's memory banks, 1 byte at a time. By the time they discovered it, their records would be corrupted beyond recovery. No history. No tracking logs. No names of the victims. Just scrambled files and an error report titled Echo. In the forest below, a final group of hunters formed a perimeter and tried to organize a defense. They stood shoulder to shoulder, activating plasma weapons and forming a firing circle. It was a good tactic, if the enemy came from outside. But the woods remained still. The trees didn't part. No human charge. Just a low crack from above. One by one, branches snapped. Not from weight. From deliberate cuts. Dozens of small triggers dropped above them. They weren't bombs. They were speakers. And through them came a voice. You came here to hunt. You forgot we had teeth. The explosions followed. Not fire. Not light. But noise. High-frequency bursts designed to rupture the Predator's enhanced hearing. The soldiers fell to their knees, screaming, disoriented. And then, in their blurred vision, figures moved through the trees. Blades flashed. Nets flew. Darts hissed. No gunfire. No warning. Just cold efficiency. 10 minutes later, the perimeter was gone. In the alien ship's command chamber, the lead hunt master stood alone, blood dripping from a wound in his side. He was breathing heavy, one eye swollen shut, the other fixed on a monitor showing static. His ship was lost. His team destroyed. Earth was supposed to be a prize. Instead, it had become a tomb. Behind him, a figure emerged from the dark. A human. Older. Wearing no armor. Just a coat, a scarf, and calm eyes that had seen more war than peace. He didn't draw a weapon. He just walked forward and stood in front of the Hunt Master. The alien roared and lunged. The man caught the swing with one hand and drove a bone shard through the creature's neck with the other. As the predator gasped his last, the man leaned close and whispered, "We didn't fight back because we were afraid. We waited because we wanted you all in one place." He let the body fall. Above, the Reaper teams withdrew. The sky remained silent. The earth beneath held its breath. And the war, once hunted, now hunted back. The stars above Earth looked no different than they had a year ago, but for those who had hunted here, they now burned with warning. In the quiet expanse of deep space, somewhere between classified relay beacons and forgotten trade routes, a message began to spread. It was not officially sent. It did not follow protocol. It was a fragment, distorted, repeating over hidden frequencies not used since the earliest days of galactic conquest. The footage was shaky, cut from helmet cams and intercepted feeds, showing moments that no predator wanted to acknowledge. Aliens falling into traps. Skiffs rupturing on the ground. A forest swallowing soldiers whole. And in the final seconds, a human face, half covered in ash, smiling without cruelty. The smile of someone who knew they had won without needing to celebrate. Below it, a single line of translated text appeared, "Pray no longer." The signal bounced from system to system, traced by fringe worlds, pirate hubs, and even scientific observatories far from Earth. At first, most dismissed it as doctored footage. A prank, maybe? Earth didn't have the capability. Earth couldn't coordinate something so advanced. But others knew better. The predator species that once used Earth as a hidden hunting ground began to pull their names off rosters. Colonies were instructed to avoid the Sol system indefinitely. Several high-value clients quietly canceled their excursions. Earth was no longer listed as harvestable. It was now red-zoned. Back on Earth, beneath the snow and silence, Director Reese sat alone in the observation room. The wall of screens in front of him now showed empty forests, reset traps, and winding paths once walked by killers who thought themselves untouchable. He did not look satisfied. Victory had never been the point. Containment was. And that was far from over. He tapped a panel and pulled up a data feed, news signals intercepted near Neptune. Unregistered. Faint. Probably just debris, but he'd learned not to assume. A technician entered with a thermal mug and set it beside him without a word. Reese spoke after a long pause. "They'll send someone else. Not the same kind. Smarter." The technician nodded. "Then we prepare the second ground." In a classified training compound somewhere between Siberia and nothing, children ran across a field of fake snow, chased by instructors who shouted in 6 different languages. These were not ordinary drills. Each child had been raised in silence, taught the patterns of fear and how to manipulate it. One girl dropped to the ground mid-sprint and buried herself in a snowbank, not because she tripped, but because she heard a drone overhead that no one else had noticed. She was 7. Another boy, barely older, disabled a motion sensor hidden in a pine tree and rearmed it in reverse. These weren't prodigies. They were the second wave. Not hunters. Not soldiers. But something worse. Children raised not to fight but to disappear until it was time to strike. Near orbit, the platform known only as Echo Node drifted silently. Inside, the man monitoring the stars leaned back as a new report scrolled across the center screen. Another unauthorized vessel had tried to probe Earth's upper stratosphere. It didn't engage. It simply scanned, then vanished. His hand hovered over the emergency protocol. But again, he waited. They would come back. They always did. And when they did, Echo Node wouldn't fire missiles or beams. It would simply activate the satellites now disguised as orbital junk. Hundreds of them. Each carrying enough data to impersonate entire fleets. Each ready to scramble every known alien targeting system and feed false positions back into enemy sensors. Earth's defense would never look like a fleet. It would look like confusion. In a cabin far from any city, the girl named Hannah sat by a fireplace, stirring a mug of cocoa. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes didn't flinch when the door creaked open. It was the man from the snow, Wraith One, now out of uniform and limping from a recent injury. He didn't speak right away. Just sat beside her, pulled a flask from his coat, and poured a splash into her mug. She looked up at him once, then back at the fire. "We won," she said. He didn't respond. She tried again. "They're not coming back, right?" This time he did answer, but not with comfort. "No. Not the same ones? But someone will. That's how they are." She went quiet. Then smiled slightly. "Good. Let them." The fire crackled beside them, and neither said another word for the rest of the night. At a diplomatic outpost light years away, a minor alien envoy submitted a motion to investigate the footage from Earth. It was denied. Too much risk. Too much attention. Earth was now a ghost sector, rumored, feared, but never acknowledged by name. Across various systems, whispers began to spread. That the humans were not what they seemed. That they had been hiding their strength. That they let themselves bleed for years to learn the weaknesses of those who thought them weak. One tale said they trained their children in traps instead of language. Another claimed they had no centralized government at all, only scattered war camps that activated during invasion. Most of it was exaggerated. All of it was terrifying. On the side of a downed Predator ship still buried deep in the Yukon ice, a human symbol had been burned into the hull. Not painted. Not carved. Burned. It was the same jagged shape Lex had left behind, 3 sharp lines in a downward slash. Below it, a single word written in primitive script, Counterstrike. Lex herself now lived under a different name in a town with no name, watching the sky as often as she breathed. She had no medals. No ceremony. Just a scar along her neck and a memory of the moment she left that ship and didn't look back. Every night she walked the frozen trail behind her cabin, waiting. Not afraid. Just ready. One night, she saw something blink in the sky, just once. Too fast to be a star. Too smooth to be debris. She went back inside and opened a metal case under her bed. Inside were 9 items: a knife, a burner tablet, a field tracker, 3 flares, a patch with the Dagger echo mark, and 2 vials of nanite serum. She closed the lid. Locked it again. It wasn't time yet. But soon. In the final moments of the intercepted transmission now circulating through fringe networks, the voice returns. Calm. Measured. Human. It says only this: if you are thinking of coming here, know this: we didn't survive the hunt. We learned to hunt the hunters. Come quietly. Or don't come at all. Then the feed cuts to black. And the echo continues. Out in the blackness between stars, someone listens. Then someone else. They don't speak. But one reaches out to another. And somewhere, far beyond Earth's reach, the next ship begins to turn. Slowly. Carefully. Toward the place the galaxy now fears. Toward the world that no longer waits.